Hello everyone, my name's Vic Gilgis and I'm going to give a talk about how to see things differently in life, and hopefully it will give you a better life to live. I'm going to illustrate what I'm talking about through a story of what I call the old sea dog. And I'm going back now to the mid-50s when I was a schoolboy, probably, I don't know, 11 or 12 years of age. And in the classroom, the teacher said, we're going to do some role play, which was very unusual in those days, believe me, for anything like that to happen, because we were stuck to the 3 Ps, as it were. But this day, there was something different. And the teacher said, I want a volunteer to sit at the front of the class. And immediately this lad, whose hand always was the first to go up, he volunteered. And the teacher sat him at the front of the class, and we all waited in anticipation as to what was going to happen. And the teacher said, I'm going to, or I have invited an old sea dog to come and talk to us about his adventures on the seas. And the reason that this was appropriate for us was because we lived in the dock area of Hull. So yes, that was a good thing. And so the teacher put the blindfold on the boy, and the boy sat there in anticipation as the teacher went across to the door, opened the door, big heavy door it was actually, slammed it to, and clunk, 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 because the teacher had a walking stick. He sat down next to the boy and pretended to be the old sea dog. And he said to the boy that he, as a result of some accident out at sea, he got a wooden stump, and he got hold of the lad's hand and said, can you feel my wooden stump? And the lad, his hand felt the stump, and the lad smiled, and we all laughed and what have you. And then the teacher, who had got a patch out of his pocket and put it across his eye, said, and as a result of an accident at sea as well, the sea captain has got a patch over his eye, and feel the patch. And so he took the lad's hand and put it on the patch, and the lad smiled and sat there. And then what he did was, and unbeknownst to us, the teacher had got an orange and cut it in half, which he took out of his pocket, and then said to the boy, and now I'm going to take the patch off so that you can, the socket there, the captain's eye was picked out by the seagulls, and he grabbed hold of the lad's thumb and said, I'm going to put your hand into the socket so you can feel. And immediately he jabbed the lad's thumb into this orange. With that, the lad jumped up in total kind of terror, tore off his blindfold. We all laughed, and then the lad started laughing. And, well, that was that. Now, we shouldn't really tell this story because it's not very PC, and certainly wouldn't happen nowadays. No teacher would do that, and well, obviously no teacher should have done it then, but that was then. And I'm telling this story for a reason, because it was quite apparent to us, and this was the point the teacher was making, is that we all have an imagination, and our imagination can run riot. And so when you look at that, look at our imagination, we can have good imaginings, we can have bad imaginings, and anywhere in between. And our imaginings come from our thoughts. And there it is that prior to this, in other talks, I've talked about the 3 principles of mind, which is the energy of life running through everything, and thought, the field of thought that creates all thought that runs through it, and consciousness, our ability to know what that thought is or be aware of that thought. That space within is where that comes from, and that is the creator of our thoughts, the creator of our imagination. And because thoughts give rise to feelings, when we imagine particular things, we have particular feelings. So in the case of the schoolboy, he had a kind of a fearful imagining that he was going to actually, or he was actually touching somebody's eye socket because his thumb was thrust into this orange, and that's why he jumped, because in that instant he thought that was happening. And that is a thing, is that our imagination cannot tell fact from fiction, and often our thoughts about things are, well, they are the one and the same thing. And therefore, the point I'm making here is that what we have in us is there. It is the source of those thoughts, of those imaginings, and that these thoughts or our imaginations are just energies. And so that means, because they are things that are, like in the case of the old sea dog, not real, it is imagined, and I'm not saying that things aren't real, because, you know, if a bear is chasing you out of the woods, it's a real bear, but often we think that things are chasing us out of the woods, and that's our imagination, our fearful imagination. So what this means is that often when we look at our feelings about things, like as in the case of the boy being frightened, we can know when our mind is giving us low thoughts. And when we have good feelings, we can also know that our mind is giving us good thoughts. And that is a good indicator as to what's going on. And it is a good indication that when we are with bad feelings, to come away from those bad feelings, because we don't have to take them seriously, because they are our imaginings. Now, the opposite is applies, where, say, for example, we have good imaginings because and good feelings because we're having good thoughts, that we can then ride that for all it's worth. So certainly where we are in a state of creative imaginings, to go with it, to stick with the plot, as it were, and get out of as much juice, we're talking about oranges, out of that idea as possible. Because that's where we are, that's where our imagination, our thoughts have led us. But also knowing that it is still thought energy, still our imagination. And when it takes us into low places through bad imaginings, that we don't have to stay with it, because it is not real, it's not necessarily real. This gives us the advantage that our take on things can be as we want it. In other words, it is our free will to kind of go with the good and if we wish, go with the bad, or basically refrain from the bad. And that also means that because we know it's a bit of a thought game, as it were, that if we have horror type thoughts, then we, in effect, if we want, like enjoying a horror movie, we can enjoy that aspects and get excited with those aspects in our life, which are the downs, and go with it as part of life's rich tapestry. But also, we can use that kind of way of thinking to help us. In other words, we haven't got too much on things, meaning to say that if life isn't so good at the moment, the way certain things are going, that we could look at it as life's providence taking us in particular ways where something might show up new possibilities, or that this particular situation is certainly one that we can handle because it's one of our creation. And in saying that, if we are in a fearful state, it is a bit like our mind being looking for good food in a rubbish bin. We're just not going to find it there. Or another metaphor is like sticking our head in dirty toilet water and looking for something fresh. It's just not going to happen. But there we are. We have the signal given to us by our feelings as which way to look. And I'm not trying to be prescriptive here, because you cannot be prescriptive about saying, don't look at your thoughts, look at what gives rise to your thoughts. But the fact that we have this knowledge means that we can, in actual fact, shift our emphasis away from our intellectual musings or our analytical musings, our ins and outs and probings and what have you. In other words, we can basically have a less take on things that are currently distracting us, to get us a clear mind, to get back to what is clear, what is fresh. In other words, what will always provide us with fresh ideas, some being good, some being bad, but the fact that that's where the good, in actual fact, does come from. Now, that means that when we don't have such a serious take on things, and can even enjoy the bad and certainly enjoy the good, means that we are not going, if we wish, too long on any particular thought that can lead basically to a kind of a bad life, because we can switch away from that and just get back into an open mind where fresh thought is going to come through. Now, that means that from moment to moment, we are only one thought away from living a different life, from living a better life. We don't have to stick with the rubbish, because we can move away from that, because we know that's not where the fresh stuff or the good stuff is, that we will always have the ability to be with what creates those thoughts. Now, as I've said before, what creates those thoughts wants what's best for us, because the energy of life is behind those thoughts, and it wants us to thrive. So certainly when our conditioned mind, our learning, what we've taught is more out of the way, because of in the ways I've just said, that we can basically stay with our consciousness on what is fresh, what is full of new information and betterment for us. And so that the us that was there yesterday doesn't have to be the us that is with us today, because any time that we are in the mire, as it were, we know who is getting us in the mire, and it is our thought system or our imagination, and that we have the ability, because we are the director of our thoughts, to switch away from that to back to our source energy, which is always providing us with new information, new knowledge, fresh thought that is always helpful to us, even in the sense that our consciousness, which is our awareness of things, will tap us on the shoulder to tell us when we are in the mire, as it were, through our feelings. Now, I think that's a wonderful ability that we have, a natural ability that we have, which we not take for granted, but we forget. And in forgetting, we concentrate on our particular thoughts, thinking, if you take the bad side of things, that is the situation, when it is not the situation. It is us that is creating that situation, and we don't have to do that. So that can be us yesterday and today, because we have that knowing And that we have also that knowing, that knowing can come through us, that things can change, that we can look to some direction of awareness and direction of thought being provided that is always helpful to us in any situation, and we never have to prepare for it. It's like we don't walk across the road without looking for cars. Then our natural awareness will take us along, whereas often we think by studying the dangers of things that we're going to be out of danger. No, our innate capabilities are always there to keep us out of danger and wisely guide us in the right direction. And once we know that, that's very reassuring that it's there, and that it holds us, and we can feel held by that, which in today's times, with this lockout particularly coming into lockdown, particularly coming to an end, with new possibilities. And that's a thing I'd like to mention, is that this is a chance that business and life and us are starting to come away to going back out into the world more, that we can go back out into the world not with a plan of I must do this or I must avoid that in order to be happy, to know that our natural senses will always guide us moment to moment in real time, by showing us what to do, because we have the facility of thought being generated that will tell us to do, and our consciousness making us aware of that, and the fact that mind or spirit is always behind us, guiding us as what to do in the best way for us. So thank you very much. I hope this talk and this video has been helpful. Thanks again for looking and listening.